What if a slasher movie, but a chimp? Simple yet brilliant, or something else? Let's find out.
Alright, you bastard, let's see who you really are. A monkey, Wes? I mean, Jesus, you guys aren't even trying anymore, are you?
But the market research says people love monkeys.
Primate is directed by Johannes Roberts, who co-wrote the screenplay with Ernest Riera. Roberts is no stranger to horror or animal-based horror. He also helmed a couple of shark movies, 47 Meters Down and its sequel. If you're a VHS fan, you might also recall his segment in '99, involving a sorority with a hazing ritual including a knight buried alive in a coffin. There was also Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Raccoon? This guy is obsessed with animals. Primate in particular, however, has struck a chord with audiences and critics, in part thanks to its hook. A chimp as the killer in a slasher is just bananas enough to make you sit up in your seat, but somehow not so ape it makes it impossible to suspend disbelief. Enough monkeying around, let's see for ourselves. Is Primate more fun than a barrel of monkeys, or is it just monkey business? Yes, I know chimpanzees are apes, not monkeys, but there aren't as many sayings about chimps. The movie begins with ominous text. The first case of hydrophobia was recorded in 2300 BC. Infected animals literally go mad at the sight of water. If left untreated within 48 hours, it is incurable. Today, hydrophobia is better known by the Latin word for madness, rabies. Hydrophobia? Who would be afraid of water? It's gotten to the point where water gives me anxiety. And water shouldn't do that. Water, the primordial ooze. That's where we came from. We came from the water. Water is life, and I hate water. I swear I don't have rabies. Between the ominous text and John Carpenter-inspired score, this movie will have you believing rabies is some kind of elemental evil. The text might as well describe possession and exorcism, warning that sometimes fallen angels visit our realm to spread their darkness. It cues that this movie will not make the mistake of overly winking at the audience. Instead, it treats the subject matter as deadly serious, which will naturally be funny considering the silly premise. That goes along with something Roberts told Bloody Disgusting. I don't like horror comedy at all. It's a genre that I really don't get, but I love horror that has humor. When veterinarian Doug Lambert, played by Rob Delaney, who plays Peter in Deadpool 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, when Lambert makes a night call to check on Ben, a chimpanzee who suffered a mongoose attack, sure enough, that mongoose bite did more than break his skin. It infected him with rage. I mean rabies. Sorry, I've been writing a lot about the 28 Days Later movies lately. One symptom of rabies? Aggression. Now, aggression comes in many forms. Tonight, it comes in the form of Ben ripping Doug's face off. A shockingly violent, though tastefully brief moment. Like many slashers, the cold open serves the purpose of getting the party started right away, while previewing the danger ahead to ensure you something bad awaits your main characters. It follows a template, but within that template, you can be creative. Primate has a unique premise, and it takes advantage of that by showing why a chimp makes a more formidable bad guy than the usual psycho with a knife. You can knock a knife out of someone's hand, but here, just Ben's fingers are weapons, powerful enough to remove a man's face with ease. It makes the villain particularly terrifying, so every time the characters are in close proximity, there's a real sense of danger. Now, I'm throwing the words bad guy and villain around, but you actually kind of feel bad for Ben throughout the movie. He's sick, and every time he pats the wound on his arm as though silently asking for help, it breaks my heart a little. Images behind the opening credits provide a few glimpses of backstory. A professor of linguistics fosters a chimp named Ben, teaches him to communicate through sign language and a tablet. The professor passes due to cancer, leaving behind Ben, who remains a pet to her family, her husband Adam, who is deaf and communicates through sign language, their daughters, Lucy and Erin. Since their mother's passing last year, Lucy has been away for college and rarely visits. But 36 hours prior to Lambert's impromptu face removal, Lucy boards a flight. She's finally coming home for the summer to Hawaii. She's joined by close friend Kate. On the flight, they also bump into a couple of strapping young gentlemen and get their numbers. Speaking of strapping young gentlemen, Kate's brother Nick welcomes them home. Lucy will say Nick is just a friend, but we can tell she likes him. Too bad she's got competition. Kate decided to invite her friend along too, Hannah. So annoying. One common criticism I've heard for this movie is that the dialogue is laughable. I think it's generally fine, like 80% of the time. It only gets corny when it oversteps and tries for something unnecessarily dramatic. Like Lucy and Kate drawing attention to these necklaces they wear, each with one half of a heart. We already get that they're close friends and care about each other. We don't need the shared pendant cliche, or the "don't worry, I'm here for you" dialogue. But honestly, when they're just talking like normal people, I thought it was fine, and the whole cast committed themselves to the roles. They're all likable enough you don't want to see them torn apart by an ape, especially Lucy, played by Johnny Sequoia, and her family. Her father, played by Oscar winner Troy Kotsur, the second deaf actor to ever win an acting Oscar, the man who developed the Tusken Raider sign language for The Mandalorian. He infuses the character with such warmth. He's sorry to have not seen Lucy in so long. He's sorry to leave them for a few days, but so happy to have her back and his family together. With the family only briefly reunited before he leaves for a business trip, I found myself genuinely wanting that family to remain intact and survive the incoming ape attack. Can't say as much about Ben. You get a couple of scenes of the good times while Ben is still himself. You see him playfully shake Hannah's hand and a couple of other silly things. It's enough you'd understand why the family has this chimp as a pet and does not see him with his sheer size and strength as a threat. But it doesn't go too far in establishing the bond, convincing you Ben is really considered part of the family. And I think that's probably intentional. The movie's focus is on a chimp as the monster. There is the tragic underbelly that he once was family and now the fatal disease has made him dangerous, but that isn't the movie's focus. And except for rare glimpses, that sense of tragedy isn't really there. King Kong, this is not.
It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast.
By the way, you know what's the worst? Water. Yeah, Ben is eyeing the pool now with suspicion. That water is up to something, I tell you. Yes, hydrophobia. The rabies are coursing through his veins now, and he's already showing early signs of aggression. When Adam discovers the dead mongoose in Ben's cage and bite on his arm, he calls for Lambert. Ben will stay locked up until then. The whole hydrophobia thing, by the way, stems from a real physical symptom of rabies, where the throat spasms whenever a person tries to swallow, so they become unable to drink water, and it gets to a point where even the thought or sight of water causes panic, then further spasms. To the outside observer, it would appear like a fear of water. The next day, it's time for Adam to go. He's a novelist, and they're turning one of his books into a movie, so he's got meetings. For the college students, home alone in Hawaii, you know what that means. Party! They even call those guys from the plane and leave a message with their address. That night, we finally arrive at the scene which opened the movie. Dr. Lambert arrives, opens Ben's cage, and loses a face. Now, Ben is on the loose. Once he takes a bite out of Aaron's leg, there's no denying Ben is not himself. They all jump into the pool for safety and use Nick's shirt as a tourniquet to stop Aaron's bleeding. They'll be safe in the pool, chimps can't swim, but Aaron will need a hospital soon. I was surprised to realize this isn't just an ape slasher, it's also one of those stuck in one place movies, because the whole thing centers around this pool. They can't leave the water except brief moments lest they attract Ben's attention. Thankfully, between the large glass house and the cliffside right next to the pool, it's a beautiful environment, despite the horrible things that are about to happen. I didn't notice the cliffside at first, but when they try to tie Ben up, Nick accidentally stumbles on a children's toy that makes too much noise, so he tosses it off the cliff, and the camera follows to ensure we know, go off the wrong side of that pool, you're dead. Having Aaron get bit was also a necessary addition because it adds a ticking clock. They could just wait Ben out in the pool, but with Aaron bleeding, there's a sense of urgency. They have to get out and get her to the hospital. When Ben perches on the edge of the pool, which overlooks that cliff, Nick gets the idea to shove him off. You can guess how that ends. Nick's head cracked open like a coconut on the rocks below. That's one way to resolve a love triangle. Archie, Betty, and Veronica, take note. Is that an outdated reference? Probably. You start to see here the benefits of a somewhat intelligent but not human animal as the villain. For example, in a typical slasher, it'd be difficult to construct a scenario where the main characters are stuck in a pool while the killer just stares at them, because what is the killer waiting for? But if you can put that scenario together, it's creepy, and it's achievable with a chimp who can't swim and currently suffers from hydrophobia. There's also a great moment where after throwing Nick off the cliff, Ben basically does the chimp version of a maniacal laugh, which gives him a surprising dose of personality, as opposed to a one-note vicious animal. There's a little Art the Clown in him. What now? Lucy and her sister Erin, Kate, and Hannah are all in the pool kicking their legs to stay afloat. They can't do that forever, but there's a float just a few feet away from the pool. Lucy sneaks out to grab it. She succeeds, then spots something else near Ben, a phone. In for a penny, in for a pound. She grabs that too, and just barely makes it back to the pool before Ben can grab her. Another example of what could only be done with a chimp slasher. If Jason were waiting for them outside the pool, the second you step out of it, you'd have a machete in your skull. But with the chimp, not entirely in his right mind, you can be within a few feet of him, and as long as you don't make any sudden movements, you might be okay. Instead of simply sneaking around and hoping the killer doesn't spot you, you're sneaking around while the killer is right there, in plain view, so close you could reach out and touch him. Considering the silly premise, I was surprised at how tense that made me feel. It's genuinely effective. With the screen broken, the keypad doesn't work. They can't dial 911, but recent calls does work. They reach those guys from the plane, they beg for help until Ben rips out a chunk of Hannah's hair and the phone ends up at the bottom of the pool. Yes, the chimp realized he can climb on the lights above the pool and just barely reach them. Ben on the stringed lights is probably the most acrobatic thing we see from him, partly due to their use of practical effects, which are impressive. After seeing the trailer, I was surprised to learn Ben is a guy in a costume, Miguel Torres Umba. The director in various interviews has given details on it, and it wasn't just a costume. It was modular. Depending on what Ben had to do in each scene, they might attach different arms or a different head. It included a combination of puppetry and animatronics. By the way, the director also acknowledges the blatant influences on this movie. He told Bloody Disgusting, "This movie comes from Cujo. It wears its influences on its sleeve. And that is the ultimate practical movie because of the different ways that they do Cujo with the dogs. Different dog suits, guys in suits, animatronics, all that kind of stuff. We really followed that path. It's fairly convincing overall. There are a few points where I think you can tell this chimp doesn't look 100% chimp, but it's only if you're looking for it, and it never took me out of the movie. This is also a good place to highlight the score. I mentioned the inspiration of John Carpenter, and you can definitely hear it in composer Adrian Johnston's heavy use of synths. It gives the movie a 70s and 80s throwback feel, appropriate for the creature feature subgenre. The score is featured prominently a few times, usually after particularly harrowing experiences, as though welcoming you deeper into the insanity. One of my favorite moments, after Ben takes out that chunk of Hannah's hair, he gets back to the poolside and uses his tablet to speak. Aaron asks, "Why is Ben doing this?" And Lucy answers, "It's not Ben anymore." Then the score, in answer to her, gets louder and discordant as it slowly zooms in on Ben hitting the same button on that tablet again and again. The one that says, "Dead, dead, dead." Quite unsettling. Ben returns to the poolside. After a while, the girls fall asleep on the float. When they wake up, Ben is gone. Now is their chance. Lucy's phone is charging in the living room, so she sneaks inside and Kate joins her. Accidentally stepping on the remote turns on the TV, and Dora the Explorer draws Ben's attention. No slasher is complete without a hide-in-the-closet scene, though this one, again, thanks to Ben's nature as a chimp, does such a great job with proximity. The killer gets close. He leans into the closet and sort of smushes his face against the transparent garment bag. Reminds me of the T-Rex against glass above the two kids in Jurassic Park scene, but on a smaller scale. Once the coast is clear, Lucy creeps out, grabs the phone, and oh my god, Ben is right above her. He starts beating her until Katie smacks him off her. They get outside, shut the door, and Ben knows how doors work. Reminds me of the raptor in Jurassic Park trying the doorknob scene. They stop Ben opening the door, so he smashes through the glass instead. They make a break for it. Ben smashes in Katie's skull with a big rock. Next he gets on top of Lucy until Hannah manages to restrain him for a moment. Now they retreat back to the pool, where all that remains is Lucy, her sister Erin, and Hannah. Now they wait. Soon, the two guys from the plane arrive, and they die. One gets the most gruesome death of the movie, as Ben slowly tears his jaw off, and you see it all, including the skin ripping and his tongue dangling out of the gruesome mess, and Ben playfully trying to put the jaw back in place. The other guy is given a more traditional death by chimpanzee beating. Well, not that traditional. The guy tries to fight him off with a shovel, so Ben grabs that shovel and uses it on him. I have to say, although the movie begins with ripping off a man's face, Nick and Katie's deaths were brief and there wasn't much focus on the gore, so it lulled me back into the sense that this isn't a particularly gory movie. So when the jaw-ripping scene happens, it really hits. And it's just in time, because you know the inevitable final showdown is coming soon. So before it comes down to Ben versus Lucy and Erin, it's important to remind us what Ben is capable of. While Ben is distracted killing that guy, Hannah gets out of the pool, runs to the car, except wrong car. She's in Airplane Guy's car. And you know who has Airplane Guy's keys? Ben. He lets himself in. Seconds later, Hannah is dead. I will say, when the two guys show up, that's around when some fatigue sets in on this concept. The whole conceit of don't leave the pool or Ben will get you is a limitation that builds suspense, but also creates a challenge. How do you fill out 90 minutes of runtime? Their trick was to introduce the guys from the plane, so they can stumble in to add a couple of extra kills. The problem is that those guys are absolute cartoon characters, so they really are just there to die. There's no, I hope they make it out of this tension, so while they bumble around the house, you're just waiting for Ben to slaughter them. Then shifting from them to Hannah, who you also know is doomed because she isn't Lucy or Erin, it feels like more waiting, and it feels oddly unfocused because we leave our true protagonist to indulge in the two guys, then Hannah side quests. It's only a combined 10 minutes or so, but in such a short movie, that feels like a while. I do have to admit, the whole Hannah sequence was largely featured in the trailers, so that added an unfair sense of familiarity. I was already getting bored by the two guys scene, and then when I thought we'd get back to Lucy, instead it was, remember that trailer you saw 5 times? Well, here it is again, except longer. Which admittedly is not fair to hold against the movie. Now only 2 remain, Lucy and Erin. Erin has lost a lot of blood. She isn't doing well. No more putting it off. Lucy has to get help. She leaves the pool, accidentally steps on a shard of glass barefoot. Why is that the hardest part of this movie to watch? Then Ben is upon her, except a distraction. Adam is back. He got word they tested the mongoose and found rabies. He tried to call Lucy, but no answer, so of course he drove straight home. But his arrival is only a momentary distraction. Soon, Ben is on the attack again, and Lucy's screaming cannot alert Ben, who has no hearing. She fights him off by gouging that mongoose bite, and let's be honest, that mongoose is the real villain in all this. Then Lucy, Erin, and Adam, once he figures out what's going on, fight by essentially taking turns drawing the chimp's attention. Each is attacked, but before mortal damage can be done, the other distracts the chimp and then they take a turn. In one particularly brutal moment, Ben claws at Erin's torso and tears through her flesh like paper. One of my favorite parts is Adam versus Ben, because Adam is the only one who actually gets in a few punches, like literally punching Ben in the face. And as a creature who until now seemed almost invulnerable to attack, there's something hilarious about unloading on him in such a mundane way. Like, have you tried punching it? Ben nearly kills him until Adam breaks a bottle over his head and stabs what remains of the broken glass into Ben's chest. Done and done, except it's a slasher. One last scare. Ben tackles Lucy off the balcony. He falls onto some broken furniture that stabs through his chest. What about Lucy? Adam catches her and pulls her up to safety. Erin is wheeled into an ambulance. Adam hugs his daughter, and Ben's tablet speaks. Lucy, bad. But it's just a cop collecting evidence and hitting buttons for some reason. Ben truly is gone. The end. Or is it? Johannes Roberts shared this missing chimp flyer on Instagram. Have you seen Ben? Wearing a red shirt and carrying his favorite teddy. Please call Lucy with any information. Approach with caution. Could this be early viral marketing for a potential sequel? Ben actually survived and went missing. And yes, I did actually call the number on the flyer. An international call, mind you. No idea how much that's going to cost me. It basically plays an ad for Primate. You hear Hannah on the phone from the scene where she's in the car and calls the police for help. You hear Ben in the background, then a deep voice that tells you to see Primate now in cinemas. I'd love a sequel that goes even more over the top. First, you gotta explain how Ben survived. Easy. Turns out that mongoose didn't have ordinary rabies. According to health.hawaii.gov, Hawaii is the only state in the US that is rabies-free. So what the hell did that mongoose have? Maybe it was a new mutant strain that gives Ben unusual healing abilities. I'll leave it to the writers. Overall, Primate is exactly what it promises. A fun time at the theaters. Saying that sets low expectations, like the movie doesn't take itself seriously and just feeds dumb characters into a slasher meat grinder where the killer happens to be a chimp. And the movie is that to some extent, but it's not all the movie is. It takes itself seriously, and the reason it's fun is that it builds genuine suspense. Yes, the dialogue is sometimes silly and cheesy, sometimes it overreaches emotionally and doesn't quite get there, but where it matters, it mostly hits.